The House will come to order. This morning, the pledges will be said by Phoebe Davis from Denver School of the Arts, Mia Davis and Tate Davis from Polaris at Ebert Elementary in Denver, Colorado, guests of Representative Sullivan.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Randall, please call the roll.
Great job, you guys.
Representatives Arndt, Baisley,
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Beckman,
oh, I'll be back.
Benavides. Representative Benavides. Byrd. Bockenfeld. Buck.
Oh, you did?
Buckner.
Okay, perfect.
Quintale. Caravale. Carver excused. Catlin excused. Coleman. Cutter. Duran.
Right. Excused.
Escar. Exum. Froelich. Garnett. Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Oh, she's here. Excused.
Gray. Hanson. Herod. Holtorf. Hooten. Humphrey. Jackson. Arquez Lewis. Kennedy. Kip. Kraft-Tharp. Kraft-Tharp.
We've got the time. Excused.
Landgraf excused. Larson. Liston. Lontine. McCluskey. McKean. McLaughlin excused. Melton. Michelson Janae. Mullica. Neville. Pelton. Ransom. Rich. Roberts. Sane. Sandridge. Singer. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Sullivan. Tipper. Tatone. Valdez A. Valdez D. Representative Gonzalez Gutierrez is present. Van Winkle. Weissman. Will. Will. Williams. Wilson. Young. Madam Speaker.
Leave the FedEx box, period. Representative Young.
Madam Speaker, I move that the Journal of Friday, January 10th, 2020 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That joke just never gets old. The motion passes. Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated was founded on January 5th, 1911 on the campus of Indiana University in Bloomington. The fraternity, originally called Kappa Alpha Nu, was established by 10 black men, partly to provide an alternative to the racially exclusive student organizations on campus. These men of vision decided the fraternity would be more than another social organization. The reliance would be placed upon high Christian ideals and the purpose of achievement in every field of human endeavor. Joining us here today, the Denver Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity was chartered on February 20th, 1954, thriving today as a chapter of the Middle Western Province under the same belief. We believe that by helping those who are less fortunate, we move closer to living up our beliefs and function as responsible members of our community. Members, many of us are blessed to serve here in the legislature and outside of this building to help others in need across our great state. I'm blessed to serve with my brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi by sponsoring and supporting a number of programs designed to give back to the community, including distributing food baskets during Thanksgiving and Christmas, sponsoring youth programs which provide training and mentoring for middle and high school boys on achieving academic excellence, career development, and interpersonal skills. Each year, our foundation provides 20 to 24 young African-American men with scholarship money and full multimedia laptop computers for college. Over the past few years, our foundation has honored more than 700 young African-American men at our luncheon, $700,000 in scholarships. Also, Kappa Housing and Kappa Management Incorporated manages 3 HUD properties for low-income senior citizens in Denver for the African-American community, one of which provides 45 one-bedroom apartments for low-income senior citizens. So I'd like to recognize our polemarch, Javard Hitch, our vice polemarch, Dwayne Moore, our former Middle Western Province polemarch, Damon Berry, as well as former State Senator Penfield Tate, our leadership, and all of my brothers. Please join me in a round of applause for the members of Kappa Alpha Psi.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, I have to say I got the right year but the wrong frat. I appreciate you all being down here. As a Denver native, I have personally seen all the work that your organization has done, from your scholarship to Kappa League to the Kappa Tower. And so as your brother in Divine Nine, I ask that you can continue to do that work and commend you and thank you for being here.
Representative Herod.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I just want to give a special acknowledgement to former Senator Penfield Tate. Thank you for all that you have done for Colorado and for specifically Northeast Denver. We appreciate you being here, Penn.
And members, I forgot to call out, with 59 present and 6 excused, we have a quorum. Other announcements and introductions, Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of the esteemed Joint Technology Committee, and for the rest of the General Assembly with the 59 present today, you are more than welcome to join us upon adjournment in Senate Committee Room 352. We will be meeting 10 minutes upon adjournment of the House or the Senate, whichever gets out last. So we'll see you today, Senate Committee Room 352. Got a big schedule in front of us. Looking forward to seeing you there.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, if I could have your attention, I know you all travel a long ways. Well, some of you traveled a long ways to get here, and some of you just drove around the block. That's okay to be here this morning, but a couple of folks over here on my right traveled probably the furthest from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Rachel Grosskirth and Mitchell Orlasky are over here on my right, coming all the way from Eau Claire, Wisconsin to see what the Colorado Capitol looked like. They're accompanied by Dr. Susan Smith, who's Assistant Professor of Nursing. Please welcome them to the Capitol.
Representative Olson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Also, colleagues, on your desk from last week, you had notification that this week is the Sportsman's Caucus. We will be meeting downstairs. We will have the famous hot dogs there for the Sportsman's Caucus. I don't know if the Claw Caucus is meeting opposite of us this year again. but if they are, you've got to make a choice of whether you're going to talk about the animals or eat them. You're going to have to make that decision. The second thing is that this week is the National Western, and 1 week from Friday, we will be purchasing a steer from a Colorado 4-H person. If you want to join the Cowgirl or Cowboy Caucus, please see Representative Arndt or myself, and we'll fill you in on how you can come up with the bucks for that. We need about 10 grand to purchase one of those steers, so let's get with it. Thank you.
Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it is an honor to serve with you. And members, if you can attend this Thursday, the Sportsman's Caucus, we appreciate it and hope to see you there. Also, Capitol Commission is having their morning Bible study every Tuesday morning from 7:15 a.m. to 8:45. And with that, every Tuesday at noon, there's a session for your aides, and hope to see you there.
Representative Esgar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have talked with the Majority Leader and gotten permission to be excused tomorrow morning. I'm asking your permission as well.
Permission granted. Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A reminder for Judiciary Committee members, today is the first of our 2 days of joint Judiciary Committee smart hearings. We will get going on the adjournment of both chambers. You will see on the Senate schedule, there is a memorial in the Senate this morning. It then comes over for us to memorialize. So we will get going 10, 15 minutes after we have finished discussing that memorial. I may come and make another announcement. Given the volume of the work that we have to do, and on the advice of nonpartisan staff who helps us manage these calendars, please be prepared to work through lunch today. Bring something, order something in. We need to power through. Thank you.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Having spoken to the Majority Leader, I request permission to be excused this Friday, the 17th, starting at noon.
Excused. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of the Capital Development Committee, Representative Beckman and Valdez, we have a meeting tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. and 3:57. See you there.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I just wanted to give you a quick update on this morning's work. There is a memorial in the Senate that has already started for Kathy Arnold. It will be coming over to the House when they are finished with the Senate. There are 150 guests, and there are 4 former elected House members that are going to speak over here. So I gave an announcement to my caucus earlier this morning that wasn't completely accurate. So I believe I would recommend, Madam Speaker, that we go into recess until the Senate finishes up their work and then come back and finish up the memorial before we break for our work this morning.
Thank you. Did everyone hear that announcement? Raise your hand if you did not hear that announcement. So, any other announcements or introductions? And if none, we will go into recess. Just in a minute. Majority Leader Garnett, how do you want to call people back? Because it could be, you know.
They've already started, and they're a little bit further along, so people should just hang out and assume it's Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, they've already started in the Senate, and they're already having former members of the Senate speaking in the well, and so they're moving along quite quickly, and so I would assume that it's in the next 20 to 25 minutes. So if you can just hang around here and don't go too far, and then as soon as we get the memorial, we will make an announcement and bring everyone back.
So with that, any other announcements? Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I need the Capitol Choir.
Don't all jump at once.
And Representative McCluskey, front and center. Woohoo! And Representative Van Winkle, front and center.
Are we singing twice or are we singing once with both names?
Do we
Which-
go
which
McCluskey
order?
Van
Which
Winkle?
order?
Okay, McCluskey Van Winkle.
Okay, McCluskey Van Winkle. McCluskey Van Winkle.
Look at you both.
There they are.
Aww. All right, ready?
Hit it.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Representative McCluskey and Van Winkle. Happy birthday to you.
Any other announcements or introductions? Representative McKean.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
You as well.
Hey, folks, let me have your attention. I was going to hold off on this until we did later announcements, but then I realized that that's a little bit in question. We owe a debt of gratitude to some men and women who serve in this Capitol building, and we need to pay them our respects. And I would ask that you do this, that you actually do what I'm asking you to do, which is weird because I'm a Republican and you're Democrats, and that doesn't always happen. But this should happen because if you recall, on Thursday we had a little bit of a kerfuffle in this chamber. We had some people who came into our house and wanted to disrespect our house. And they wanted to bring their issue here. And it doesn't matter what that issue was. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter if it was somebody who agreed with one side of this aisle or the other. It does not matter. The institution of this legislature is more important than any one of us, and you keep hearing me say that. But we have some individuals in the back of this room who understand that. And we have some state troopers in this Capitol who understand that. And we owe them a tremendous debt of gratitude for coming in and taking care of that situation so that the integrity of our institution was not besmirched. So my thanks, our thanks to all of you, our sergeants, to our state troopers. Thank you guys for doing your job, for doing it for all the right reasons and for doing it so well. We appreciate you. We appreciate you keeping us safe. But even more importantly, we appreciate the fact that you keep this institution true to what we're here for. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Representative McKean. And thank you to our House Sergeants. Any other announcements or introductions? With that, the House will be in a brief recess. The House will come back to order. Message from the Senate.
Madam Speaker, the Senate has adopted Senate Joint Memorial 1 and transmits it herewith.
Introduction of memorials.
Senate Joint Memorial 1 by Senator Story, also Representatives Tipper and Larson, memorializing former Senator Kathy Arnold.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move we suspend the rules for immediate consideration of Senate Joint Memorial 001.
The motion is to suspend the rules for immediate consideration of Senate Joint Memorial 001. Seeing no objection, we'll proceed to consideration of Senate Joint Memorial 001. Representatives Tipper and Larson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We move for the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 001 and request that it be read at length.
Mr. Randall, please read the memorial.
Whereas, our respected former colleague, Kathy Arnold, a past member of the Colorado General Assembly, departed this life on December 23, 2018. And whereas Senator Arnold was born on October 25, 1941 in Florida, but grew up in Manitou Springs, Colorado. And whereas Senator Arnold attended the University of Colorado in Boulder and majored in history and political science. And whereas before running for the State House of Representatives, Senator Arnold taught at Bear Creek High School, worked for the United States Senators Peter Dominick and Bill Armstrong, and chaired Representative Dan Schaefer's State House campaign. And whereas, in 1978, Senator Arnold ran for the State House of Representatives and became the representative for House District 28. And whereas, Senator Arnold served as a representative until 1983, when she was appointed to fill the vacancy for Senate District 22, where she served until 1986. And whereas, as a state representative, Senator Arnold was the chair of the House Judiciary Committee and a member of the Transportation and Energy Committees and sponsored bills on reduction of taxation, crime prevention, courts and judges, legislative appropriation of federal money, and many other issues. And whereas, while serving as a state senator, Senator Arnold became the first woman chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee and sponsored bills on preventing the sexual exploitation of children, expanding resources for special needs students, and reducing air pollution. And whereas in 1986, Senator Arnold was the Republican nominee for Colorado Lieutenant Governor. And whereas, after her time in the legislature, Senator Arnold was elected to an at-large position on the University of Colorado's Board of Regents, where she served for 6 years, including as chair of the board, and received the title of Regent Emeritus in 1994 for her work. And whereas throughout her career as a public servant, Senator Arnold, even with her suburban roots, was always concerned about all of Colorado, especially the western slope, where she moved upon retirement. And whereas once Senator Arnold retired, she continued to serve her community through her volunteer work on her local church board and horse riding therapy for veterans. And whereas, due to her lifelong love of horses, Senator Arnold became a competitive barrel racer in her retirement until the age of 76. And whereas Senator Arnold is survived by her husband Harold, 7 children and 11 grandchildren. And whereas Senator Arnold was a devoted public servant who was well respected by colleagues on both sides of the aisle, will be missed for her many moments of glad grace and will be remembered for her hard work, dedication, and accomplishments. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 72nd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that in the death of Kathy Arnold, the people of the state of Colorado have lost a dedicated public servant and an outstanding citizen, and that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, do hereby extend our deep and heartfelt sympathy to the members of her family and pay tribute to a woman who served her state well and faithfully. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint memorial be sent to Senator Arnold's husband, Harold Arnold, and her children, David Arnold, Matthew Arnold, Mindy Kelly, Leanne Wambolt, Megan O'Donnell, Emily Arnold, and Richard Speltz.
Members, we will start with current members speaking first. Are there any current members who wish to speak? Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will keep my remarks brief. I just wanted to say what an honor it is to have the Arnold family here today. Kathy Arnold was the beginning of what was quite the legacy of Jeffco Republican women, which sadly is not what it once was. But many of the folks that I looked up to and sought advice for in my campaign, Norma Anderson, Vicki Agler, Faye Griffith, remarked upon people like Kathy who had come before them and really set the table. Kathy was really a trailblazer. She was one of the first women, or the first woman to chair the Senate Judiciary Committee, I believe, back in the 80s, and her legacy continues on and I think is really felt in this chamber today. So with that, I will let Representative Tipper.
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Arnold was House District 28, which is obviously the district that I represent. And I just wanted to share a couple things that I read from her obituary, which I thought were, given the number of family members and friends that have reached out to us, I wish I would have known her because she seemed like a tremendous woman. It was said that she had a gift for making each person feel like they were the only person in the room. She spent her last moments with her family and loved ones, reassuring each one of her love for them, God's love for them, and the promise of eternal life and reunion. Kathy completed her lifetime of service with grace, humility, dignity, and most of all, love. I think all of us here in this chamber could aspire to be like Kathy, and I am so honored as well to be able to recognize the wonderful woman, leader, Republican, and public servant that she was to the state of Colorado.
Thank you, representatives. Under Rule 26, we will have a recess to allow former members to speak. So with that, the House will be in recess. Representative Larson.
Madam Speaker and members, we'd like to introduce former Representatives Don Lee, Frank DeFilippo, Vicki Agler, and Tom Tancredo is not here, and Miller Hudson and former Senator Norma Anderson as well.
Okay, so we are going to start with representatives. Representative Agler, and then Representative Anderson, or Senator Anderson, I guess. Representative Agler.
Thank you. This up and down thing is an issue.
Press vertically challenged.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm former Representative Vicki Agler, and it is truly an honor to be here today to take part in the memorial to a dear friend and a wonderful person, Kathy Arnold. I want to take you back to my first real encounter with Kathy back in 1986. I had become kind of active in the community, working on mainly planning and zoning issues, and it became obvious that if you wanted to be effective in Jefferson County, you needed to be politically astute. And so I became active and became a committee woman and all of those things. And in 1986, Kathy called me kind of out of the blue and asked me if I would chair her campaign for lieutenant governor for the state of Colorado. I was young and naive and said, sure. And our friendship and my knowledge of politics and my addiction for it, as I blame Harold as well, began with Kathy Arnold. So she is so dear to me. We want to tell you one story about the campaign, because back then, in the olden days, the lieutenant governor ran separately from the governor. It wasn't until this century that was changed. So we ran her campaign separately, and Harold was such a supporter of Kathy, and we decided that we would have a big fundraiser for her. And the River Point Mall had just opened. It's now part of the Arapahoe Community College. It's not even a mall anymore, but it had just opened. And Harold had connections with the Glenn Miller Band. I had to go ask him the name of the band this morning because I knew it was a big band, but I couldn't remember which group it was. But he had some connections, and so he had them come to put on the fundraiser. He worked it all out. We used the center of the mall. It was beautiful. We had a fabulous turnout and made a chunk of change. And that's where we got into trouble, was because the state party called us and really came down on us because lieutenant governors weren't supposed to make that kind of money during their campaign, because that would detract from the 4 governor candidates that were running at the same time, and we were chastised. We laughed. We had a wonderful time, and the memories couldn't be changed. So with that, I went on to become active, and Kathy encouraged me. She moved away, but we remained friends, and her family has always been supportive and strong and of me and as I've gone forward. So she's to blame or to credit for my career and for my life from that point on. So I owe a lot to Kathy, and I love her dearly. And I'm sorry that she didn't become Lieutenant Governor, because she would have been the best one we could have ever had.
Senator Anderson.
Whoops. A little low for me. Thank you.
It's new this year.
Thanks. We didn't have movable speakers back then. Thank you, Madam President. You're not a president, you're a speaker. I was just in the Senate.
Welcome to the lower chamber.
Confused. I was a good friend of Kathy Speltz Arnold, and I loved her dearly. And the first time I met her was Dan Schaefer. Probably not many of you remember Dan Schaefer. He was a congressman before that. He served in this House. And it was his first campaign for this House, and Kathy was chair of the campaign, and that was how I met Kathy. She was a worker, and she made all of us work hard, trust me. And after that, you've heard that Kathy ran for the State House. When she ran for the State House, she would keep her horse and ride it in parades, and you'll hear some good stories about her riding in parades and the horses. She loved horses. I boarded horses, and one time she asked to keep the horse at my place overnight because she had a parade the next morning. Fine. So she went out to get her horse the next morning. Whoops, all of a sudden, there's Kathy out there screaming. I send my 8-year-old out. Well, the problem was she couldn't cross the creek. We had a little creek that ran through the property because there was a big old bull snake there, and she thought it was a rattler. And so 8-year-old picked up the snake and moved him, and Kathy came in the house. Kathy was a lot of fun to be around. She was a happy person, and she cared about people. And I worked on some of her campaigns, but then didn't get to work on the Lieutenant Governor campaign because I had a campaign that year myself. But she was a good person. And she knew how to work both sides of the aisle. You'll find there's Democrats and Republicans that'll speak and say, Kathy was a good person. Back then it was different. We didn't have all the restrictions you have now. And we cared about one another. I still have good friends on the opposite side of the aisle that I meet with. Some of them you know. And that's the way Kathy was. It didn't matter what your party was. It was your personality that counted. And her love of life and her love of horses. I did get a chance to go over to her ranch a couple of times. And she loved living there with Harold. And here is all her family. They were just about that high when I met them. But I'll close with one other little story. The last time I saw Kathy, she had a speech here in Denver, so she called me. It was out Southwest. And I went over and spent the night, and we had a nice slumber party and had a lot of fun. She will be missed by everyone. And people should try to copy Kathy Speltz Arnold. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Lee.
Yes, this was here when I was here. The best things corrections could build was right here. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to address this House today. I feel like I'm in a kind of a strange dream with Patrick Neville here in this august body. It's like waking up. I've known Patrick and his family since Patrick's about yay big. There's even a rumor that he might have been one of my daughter's first kiss. We'll just leave it at that. Well, Patrick, we need to talk. Members, I know there's much on your minds right now, especially at the start of a new session. I realize you work on a schedule of deadlines in a 120-day window. But I would ask that you clear your minds of everything for a few moments as I reflect on a truly remarkable person who sat in this august body, whose life I believe can have an impact on your life, and how you see your duties as a representative of the people of your communities. It is said that first impressions are lasting ones. I'm not sure if that's always true. Just ask my daughters about past boyfriends. But for Kathy Arnold, it was very much the case. The first time I met Kathy was my first run for the House seat she had represented in the Columbine, Ken Carroll area of South Jeffco. My goal was to meet every person who held that House seat, to first learn everything I could from their legislative experience, and second, to receive their endorsement, of course, for my candidacy. When I met Kathy, I witnessed a combination of character traits and wisdom from her that to this day, I have rarely seen anyone since that time. Kathy was gracious, kind, principled, loving, caring, and thoughtful. I thought to myself how everything she said seemed to be from the heart and thoughtful, wanting to share everything with me she learned from her time in office to help me prepare for serving our community. It's been said that when you met with Kathy, she gave you the impression you were the only person in the room, that she was truly interested in what you had to say, and I can personally attest to the truthfulness of that statement. There was one thing she shared with me, which I believe all members of this House can learn from and practice. I would ask if all of you could do me a favor and stop what you're doing and listen closely to what I have to say here. One thing Kathy shared with me was that her first day in office, she took a piece of paper and wrote down why she ran for office. She then put that paper in the top drawer of her chamber desk, and whenever she had a difficult vote to make, she'd open that drawer and read that paper to remind herself why she ran for office, to ensure her vote reflected that principled purpose. It could be something as simple as a picture of a loved one, such as a family member, a Bible verse, a poem, a tax bill. But in memory of Kathy Arnold, I would ask that you put something in your drawer to remind yourself why you ran for office as a legacy for Kathy Arnold. I'd like to thank Kathy's family for inviting me to share in the memory of Kathy's legacy. And thank you, members, for serving this great state of Colorado.
Representative DiFilippo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Tipper, Representative Larson, and members of the House, thank you for having me here to pass on a little bit of history. And also, thank you, the Arnold family, for having Kathy and sharing Kathy with me. I've known the Arnolds since February 12th, 1974, when we moved in this small house in Applewood, and we moved in and the Arnolds were there. And we spent a lot of time together, and I remember our kids would hop the fence and join in with the Arnolds. Sometimes Frank would hop the fence for Harold, and sometimes Harold hopped the fence for Frank, and come over to the house and occasionally have an adult drink or two or three or sometimes 4. So just wonderful people. In 1978, Kathy Speltz, then Kathy Speltz, and I were elected to the House. Kathy sat back here, and I was in seat 52, and we became good friends. She was in House District 28, I was in 25, and we had adjoining districts along 285. We became pretty good friends and very close allies. A few years later, concurrently, Kathy and Harold were divorced from their spouses. So seeing that you had two great people with beautiful small families, I got this idea. I'm going to introduce Harold to Kathy. So I got a baseball bat and I hit him upside the head and got him to call Kathy. So the rest is history, and it became one of the greatest mergers of the decade, of 7 kids coming together and Harold and Kathy raising them, and you could see the results over there. So and it's probably second maybe to marry my wife is maybe one of the best things I've ever done. So Kathy was a woman of strength. She was tough, she was kind, and she had integrity. She cared deeply for her district, her state of Colorado, and also for CU. And I don't know if there was a thing that CU needed that Kathy didn't try and get for them. And thank God we didn't break the budget. So but CU was very close to her heart. One of the things that I remember about Kathy was we were freshmen, and it was the summer. And I mentioned summer because today you get out, thank God, in May. So you get out in the spring. But it was the summer of 1979, and we were in the Long Bill Caucus. And that was the days before the 120-day session. It's also the days when you had the Long Bill would go on for a week or so or more. And remember when old guys are talking, things are always tougher then than they are now. You guys got it easy. And both Kathy and I went to the phone room. We were returning messages. The clerk came in and gave us messages. We went to return messages, and there was a phone room downstairs. We didn't have cell phones those days, but we did have touch-tone phones. We didn't have rotary phones. We're not that old. We had touch-tone phones. And we both received these messages, and both of us were upset about the messages. And afterwards, Kathy and I talked about it, and the message that came to both of us was, I contributed to your campaign, therefore you better vote for this issue. Both Kathy and I told the person on the phone where to put his money. But Kathy did it in a much nicer way than I did. And the guy probably donated it to Kathy's campaign, and he probably donated to my opponent's campaign the next time around. So but she's just an incredible woman of integrity and tough, and you love her. You just had to love her. There are two accomplishments of Kathy's that I don't think were mentioned in the resolution. One, everybody talks about Kathy and horses, but I don't know, Dennis, you were around. I don't know if anybody else remembers. Kathy was responsible for exempting horse feed from the sales tax. And I remember arguing and fighting and what have you about it, but Kathy got that done. The other thing that Kathy did, and these are little things that mean a lot, Kathy raised the fines for littering from $250 to $1,000. So when you travel in your districts, you travel in the state, you see a horse, remember Kathy. Or if you see littering, $1,000 fine, remember Kathy. So thank you very much, and again, thank you for serving your state and the people of the state.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members of the House. I wanted to say a few things because when I served in the legislature, just to let the Republicans know, there were 39 Republicans in the House and only 26 Democrats. So it is possible. In any event, under those circumstances, if you didn't make friends on the other side of the aisle, you weren't going to get much done down here. It was that simple. It was before the gavel amendment was passed. A committee chair could pocket veto your bill. Sometimes your bill was brought up, immediately killed, and the next day it would appear under a Republican sponsor, word for word, the bill that you had introduced. It caused me to start grinding my teeth, which I've been doing for the last 40 years. But Kathy was a good friend, and in my second term down here, we were elected, Frank and Kathy and I, in '78. And in '81, Kathy came to me and said, "Miller, would you be willing to sit down with then State Senator Joel Heffley, who went on to serve many distinguished years in Congress, and he'd like you to carry his bill with him in the House." And I was kind of puzzled because I couldn't understand what it was. Anyway, we got together, and Joel said, "I think that it's time for us to give up the winner-take-all liability systems in our courts and replace it with comparative negligence." And this was 1980. Still half of the legislature were lawyers. The majority leader in the House was Ron Straley, who had been the president of the Trial Lawyers Association in Colorado. He said, "I can get this out of the Senate, but I need 8 Democratic votes to make it pass on the House side. Do you think you can get them?" I didn't have the slightest idea whether I could or not, but I did believe in comparative negligence. Kathy was working the Republican side of the aisle. I was working the Democratic side of the aisle. And eventually it passed with 12 Democratic votes out of 26. And some years later, I had a chance to speak to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who was Luis Rivera, and I said, "Did we do a good thing? I mean, has this worked out?" And he said, "We have 50% fewer liability cases coming to court, and 70% of those cases now deliver some money to the people who have filed them, whereas under the old system with winner-take-all, only about 30% of cases ever led to a settlement." And he said, "You have done a good thing." And so when I would see Kathy, I said, "You know, the one important thing I got done in the 4 years I was there was introducing comparative negligence." I wanted to tell that story because no matter, and I understand that the frictions run hotter and the ideology runs a little stronger today than it did when I served. But keeping those channels of communications open to reach compromise on those issues where compromise is possible, that should be priority number one. And I always appreciated Kathy and Joel giving me the opportunity to work on that piece of legislation. And I'll add one other story. I've told Representative Benavides about this. When you're looking at loopholes and special tax treatment, it wasn't just horse feed. We also did bull semen. Thank you.
That's still in law. And Senator Gallagher.
Good morning, everybody. And I want to let you know that the first thing the Jesuits did to us when we went to Regis from North Denver was teach us Shakespeare's Sonnet 116. And I thought of that sonnet last night as I was thinking, what are you going to say today about Kathy Arnold? And she epitomized two lines from that sonnet, the second of which is the first of which is the second line of the sonnet. I know you're all familiar with this. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds. Isn't that a beautiful line? And what it says is, just because you come up here and argue your heart out over where some highway should be or what the tax should be or how much home taxes should pay or whatever, you then let the chips fall where they may and you still become friends. And many a time we'd be arguing about things and she'd come up and say, Gallagher, are we still friends? And that shows you that line of that sonnet in operation, one of my favorite sonnets by Shakespeare. But she also, in her own life, suffered a lot, and that last line of the sonnet, the main part, love bears it out, even to the edge of doom, is something that she did so well. And I will remember that and always be grateful for that. And I pass that on in hopes that you might be able to do that in your legislative lives as well. And finally, when I was in high school at North Denver there at Holy Family on 43rd and Utica, we sometimes would get out of class if they let us serve a Mass. And I always found very consoling the words of the old hymn, which is no longer sung, of course. Everything's in English now, English only. But the old Latin hymn really, I think, applies today. And it goes like this. Requiem aeternam dona eis Domine, et lux perpetua luceat eis. Let the perpetual light shine upon her, and may she rest in peace. And my final prayer for her and for all of us is that when we make it to heaven, the angels will welcome us to paradise. Thank you.
Are there any other former members who would like to speak? The House will come back to order. The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 001. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion is adopted. Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We move the current roll call of the House be added as co-sponsors.
If there's no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Representative Tipper.
And thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, we'd like to introduce the family we have in the chamber today in honor of the memorial to Kathy.
The House will be in recess for a few minutes to greet the guests. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Larson.
Yep. Apologies, Madam Speaker. So we're just going to do a few highlights here. So we have Harold Arnold, Kathy's husband, if you'd like to stand as we read. We have Dr. Richard Speltz, the son and daughter-in-law Becky, and grandchildren Eric, Ryan, and Abigail. We have Dr. Mindy Kelly, daughter and grandchildren Samantha and John. We have Megan O'Donnell, also daughter, and son-in-law Mike O'Donnell. We have David Arnold, the stepson, Vicky, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren Amanda and Brenna. Then we have Leanne Arnold, stepdaughter and grandchild Lauren. And then we have Emily Patton, stepdaughter and son-in-law Ken, and grandchild Elizabeth.
So now the House will be in recess for a few minutes to greet the guests.